Hello and welcome back to this week's episode of Racing Roundup, where we talk about all things motorsport. And this past weekend we had a vast variety of motorsport from all over the globe, with racing in Europe, in the States and from Australia. But we'll start of course with Formula 1, which had its Spanish Grand Prix, the fourth round of the World Championship this year, at a circuit that is infamous for its lack of overtaking, its difficulty to overtake and follow cars in Formula 1. And this year it was made even more difficult with the reprofiling of Turn 10, the hairpin at the end of the back straight, which used to be a tight, cute left-handed hairpin, which was maybe an overtaking opportunity if you were close enough, but it's now been reprofiled to somewhere in between that and the old layout of the hairpin, which was a much longer left sweeper of a U-turn. It's now somewhere in between, so it's still a third to fourth gear left-handed U-turn, but a lot less of a braking zone, which meant it was basically just not an overtaking opportunity at all. So it only really had one overtaking opportunity at the end of the start-finish straight, and even that isn't the biggest braking zone in the world. But that didn't bother Lewis Hamilton, as it turned out, in the race. But in qualifying, Hamilton made history with his 100th pole position, a record that will probably never be broken in Formula 1, considering for context that in second on the all-time pole list is Michael Schumacher, the 7-time world champion, on a lowly 68 poles, a long way behind Hamilton with his 100. So an incredible achievement from Hamilton, unlikely to ever be equalled again in history of the sport. He took pole by just 36,000 of a second, so nearly wasn't his 100th pole. From Max Verstappen, his championship rival. Valtteri Bottas could only settle for third, with Charles Leclerc an incredible fourth for Ferrari. A difficult day though for Yuki Tsunoda, the rookie. He qualified down in P16, went out in Q1, and then went on to say some questionable things about his team, suggesting that he didn't have the same car as his teammate Pierre Gasly, who has been performing much better this season than Tsunoda, the rookie. That's not something you particularly want to say as a rookie to Formula 1 at all, let alone when you're in the Red Bull programme. You've got Helmut Marko ready to chop you from the sport as soon as you don't do something that he likes. So when you're the rookie, especially in the Red Bull programme, that's you're not really in the place to make those sort of claims. But he did, but then thankfully he later apologised for his comments, and everything was good. But a lot of people are saying that he needs to start calming down and get his head focused. He's quite an angry, sweary person on the team radio, which we've seen in the first few races, and that was funny to start with, but a lot of people are sort of suggesting he's not got the right headspace for the sport and a lot of other things. So hopefully he'll start to realise that he needs to put a cap on his emotions, which is easier said than done, obviously. But hopefully he'll manage to get in the right headspace, and hopefully that will then also start to see the points come in, because he got points in his debut race, of course, but since then he hasn't scored a single point, which isn't what Yuki would be wanting. In the race, however, surprisingly, considering it's the Circuit de Barcelona-Catalunya, it was a good race. Lots of strategy at play, actually lots of overtaking as well, which just goes to show just how good this 2021 season is being. It all started from the start with Max Verstappen getting quite a good start alongside Hamilton, and dived him very aggressively into turn 1. He made his intentions clear right at the start, and if it wasn't for Hamilton's experience and expertise and awareness, he probably would have collided him, and he just managed to turn out at the last minute. And then Charles Leclerc, turn 3 of the race, at the start of the race, made a very good move around the outside of Bottas as a flat out right-hander turn 3, reminiscent of Fernando Alonso passing Hamilton at the start of the race in 2013. So incredible move there from Leclerc to get up into third. Fortunately that didn't turn out into the podium. Bottas managed to get him back later in the race, although he was struggling to do so. He dropped a long way behind the leading pair, Hamilton and Verstappen, as always, as it seems, but the fact he was struggling to get past a much slower Ferrari isn't good for Bottas's hopes in the future of the team. Yuki Tsunoda's difficult weekend continued. He suffered an early DNF because of a reliability problem. He stopped at the outside of the new turn 10, and that caused a safety car at the early stage of the race. Some people came in, some didn't, just a normal safety car period really. But the race itself was all about strategy, and it ended up being a copy of the 2019 Hungarian Grand Prix, where Lewis Hamilton was hunting down Max Verstappen, but then Hamilton came in for a second stop, sort of in the second or final third of the race, and Verstappen tried to make it on the one stop. Hamilton was on the faster tyres on the two stop and was due to hunt him down and catch him in the final stages of the race, which once again he did. But Valtteri Bottas did not make it difficult for him. Did make it difficult for him, in fact. He was on the one stop, so therefore was in second at the time. Hamilton was closing up to him. He was given the team orders to let Hamilton through, but he did not make it easy. He held him up through the first and second sector of the circuit, only letting him through when they got round to turn 10. And even then he didn't make it that easy. He turned in on him a bit. Didn't see the onboard, but it looks like from the outboard shot that's what happened. So that wouldn't have put him in Toto Wolff's good books in Mercedes there. He would have got a slap on the wrist for that, but all very entertaining for us fans. We weren't sure if they were even going to collide or not at that point, but Hamilton did get past him, and it was actually a bit of an anticlimactic finish. He ended up passing Verstappen even on lap 60 or 66, so not quite as down to the wire as Hungary in 2019, but still a very on the edge of your seat race. But it wasn't the end of the action after lap 60, because the battle for the final point was raging between the likes of Fernando Alonso, Lance Stroll, Pierre Gasly. They were all really close and battling quite hard actually. Surprising to see for Barcelona circuit to see that sort of thing happen, but all very promising for Formula 1. Let's hope the new regulation changes don't end up ruining that. It would be very, very Formula 1, I think, if that would be to happen. They bring in regulations to try and make the sport better, just as the sport was getting better by itself. But hopefully that doesn't happen. And Daniel Ricciardo, who had been struggling at the start of this season to get on top of his McLaren, finally managed to do so. Only qualifying on the Saturday in the race, he drove a very promising race, not quite able to hold off Sergio Perez in the Red Bull, but he managed to finish a credible P5, his best result of the season, comfortably beating Lando Norris all weekend. But yeah, so the race results for that, the usual podium finishing: Hamilton, Verstappen, Bottas first, second and third time this season out of the four races that has been the podium combination. Not the most predictable, unfortunately, but hopefully Verstappen will start winning some more races. And it's actually Hamilton's best start to a season ever, which is incredible considering we're thinking this is such a close season between Hamilton and Verstappen. The fact that this is his best start ever since he came to Formula 1 2007 is quite incredible. And Max Verstappen coming in second, he got the fastest lap in the race after he came in for a late pit stop after being passed by Hamilton for the lead. Which means in the Drivers' Championship it is Lewis Hamilton who still leads. He extends his lead now. He's on 94 points, Max Verstappen in second on 80, and Valtteri Bottas jumps up to third ahead of Lando Norris on 47 points. And in the Teams' Championship, Mercedes lead from Red Bull 141 to 112 points. McLaren hold on to third on 65, but are only now 5 points ahead of Ferrari on 60. Sticking in Barcelona, the FIA Formula 3 Championship finally got its season underway. The support category for Formula 1, it's the third step in the ladder. You've got Formula 3, Formula 2 then Formula 1 obviously. But for Juan Manuel Correa, it was his return to motorsport, his return to racing action, For the first time since his accident at Spa-Francorchamps in 2019, the accident that sadly killed Antoine Hubert in the Formula 2 support race a couple of years ago now, but he has made an incredible recovery after horrendous injuries to his legs. He had his left leg, I think he was in a massive cage to try and hold it together for a long amount of time, but he's now back in a car. Incredible achievement for him, and scored a point as well during the weekend as well, so that's amazing result for Juan Manuel Correa. But it was Dennis Hauger in qualifying who qualified on pole. To explain the qualifying format a bit, it's a bit more complicated this year. Hauger is on pole for the third race, which is the feature race, the main race of the weekend. For the first race, the first of the two sprint races, the top 12 from qualifying are reversed. So the person who qualified in 12th starts the first race on pole, and Hauger, who qualified fastest, starts the first race from 12th, which meant Johnny Edgar was on pole for the first race for Carlin, in his first race in the series. And the second race grid is decided by reversing the top 12 of the race 1 results. So the winner of race 1 starts in 12th for race 2, the second sprint race, and the person who finished 12th in race 1 starts the race 2 on pole. A bit complicated, but you can get your head around it eventually. But yeah, Johnny Edgar on pole for Carlin, but he did not manage to hold on to a podium sadly. Alex Smolia for ART passed him relatively early on lap 4. Edgar sadly dropping out of the podium positions. But an impressive weekend for MP, and particularly their two Alpine Academy drivers, two rookies for this year in FIA Formula 3. And Caio Collet was the one who shone in race 1. He ended up finishing in 3rd place in the first race. Clement Novalak for Trident ended up in 2nd, and Alexander Smolyar for ART won the first race. The race sadly ending under safety car after Rasmussen for HWA crashed at the final corner after getting caught out by the sausage curb on the exit of the penultimate corner, coming out of the chicane. In the second race, arguably the most entertaining race of the weekend, it was the race that seemingly no one wanted to win. Everyone kept on crashing out as soon as they got into the lead. It was Enzo Fittipaldi on pole, and he had a very tight battle with David Schumacher, the son of Ralf Schumacher, the brother of Michael Schumacher, and therefore the cousin of Mick Schumacher. Lots of Schumachers going around at the moment, which is a bit of a throwback to see, well, not even a throwback, it's just a bizarre experience to see the names Fittipaldi and Schumacher, two legendary names of motorsport, battling away in Formula 3, but from different eras, so to see them together on track is quite incredible. But they weren't on track for long, because on lap 15 Fittipaldi went for the lead into the first corner, and the two made contact. David Schumacher crashing out into the barriers of the exit turn 2, and then Fittipaldi stopping later around the lap with damage. That meant Dennis Hauger and Matteo Nannini inherited the battle for the lead, but on the penultimate lap of the race into the same corner, the two collided, with Hauger spinning around Nannini, with Hauger then running over the front of Nannini's car, both of them not going on to finish, or at least finish highly. That meant Oli Coldwell and Victor Martin, the other MP Alpine Academy driver who was impressive, those two also went into the first corner fighting for the lead, but managed to do something that no one else managed to do, and survive. They almost made contact, with Martin having to take to the runoff area, but the two survived to see the checkered flag, with Oli Coldwell winning his first race in Formula 2 for Prema. Victor Martin on his debut weekend came home in 2nd for MP, and Frederick Vesti for ART Grand Prix came home in 3rd. The winner from race 1, Alex Smolyar, ended up crashing at the start of the race with Logan Sargent, one of the championship contenders from last year, after I think it was Sargent made contact with Clement Novalak. He gave him a puncture, and then he ended up spinning into Alex Smolyar's ART. So not a good race for the people who did well in race 1, but for Dennis Hauger, he had a third attempt, of course, being on pole for the main race of the event, race 3, and he went on to dominate that race. He won the race comfortably ahead of Jack Doohan for Trident. After going 4 wide into the first corner at the start, he didn't make the best of starts, but Hauger, Doohan, Nannini and Martin all went 4 wide, amazingly all coming out unscathed. But yeah, Hauger held on to dominate the race from Jack Doohan's Trident, his first podium in the series, and Matteo Nannini, son of Formula 1 driver as well, Alessandro Nannini, he came home 3rd for HWA Race Lab, his second podium in FIA Formula 3, which means in the Drivers' Championship it is Dennis Hauger who is on top on 34 points, just 2 points ahead of his teammate Ollie Caldwell, the Brit, on 32, with Clement Novalak in 3rd for Trident on 28 points. And in the Teams Championship, Prema Racing, the team that have been the team to beat for the past few seasons ever since the merger of GP3 and European Formula 3, they lead on 66 points, Trident in 2nd on 49, and MP Motorsports leading a resurgence for them in Formula 3, having struggled the past few years. They are in 3rd on 44. Heading over to Australia, specifically South Australia, for the 4th round of the Repco Supercars Championship from the Bend Motorsport Park, formerly known as V8 Supercars, of course. And in the first race, Andre Heimgartner for Kelly Grove Racing was on pole, but in the first race, damp circuit meant that Chaz Mostert ended up winning the start ahead of Heimgartner, but no sooner had he got into the lead at the start of the race, he lost it after making a mistake, and DJR's Anton De Pasquale ended up moving into the lead, who at the very next corner ended up making a mistake himself. He ended up running wide and Heimgartner ended up regaining the lead, so despite dropping down to 3rd, he ended up taking the lead again before the end of the first lap. A scary moment in the pit lane for Scott Pye and one of the Walkinshaw Andretti mechanics when Scott Pye came into his pit box for his pit stop, nearly running over one of the mechanics who were in the pit lane, ready for one of the Andretti cars to come in for their pit stop. So that was a very scary moment. Almost, they probably did touch actually, looking at the video footage of it, but very lucky, that mechanic, shall we say, that they weren't seriously injured in that incident. I'm sure Supercars will have a look at that and see what they can do to avoid that from happening again. Cam Waters had a very scary moment into the first corner in his Mustang, Tickford Mustang, having a big lockup, nearly wiping out Jamie Whincup, one of the championship contenders. Cam Waters also a championship contender, but thankfully managed to avoid him. He rejoined the race, he didn't need to retire, it wasn't a big failure or anything, just a big lockup. But then our race leader, Andre Heimgartner, ended up being given a 5-second time penalty for an unsafe release, as well as price forward further down the order, which meant there was a great intrigue going into the end of the race whether Chaz Mostert would get close enough within to the 5-second window to take advantage of the penalty. At the end of the day he couldn't, which meant Andre Heimgartner won his first race of the season for Kelly Grove Racing, their first race win of the season as well. Chaz Mostert coming home in 2nd for Walkinshaw Andretti, and Anton De Pasquale recovering to 3rd for Dick Johnson Racing. Shane Van Gisbergen, he won the first 6 races of the season. He went on a dominant, unbeaten streak of races. In all of his races he entered at the start of 2021. He made a rare mistake on lap 20, going off and dropping down lots of positions as a result. Not something you often see from Shane Van Gisbergen. He recovered though in race 2 to finish P3, while Anton De Pasquale was on pole, leading a DJR front row lockout, and he went on to go win with his teammate Will Davidson coming home in 2nd. And then in the final race of the day, De Pasquale on pole once again, but not being able to hold on to the win or even a podium this time, because on lap 3 he suffered a misfire problem resulting in a retirement for him, with Cam Waters ending up taking the lead and inheriting the win as a result after fending off Shane Van Gisbergen towards the end of the race. Cam Waters winning his first race of the season from Van Gisbergen, and Will Davidson coming home in third for Dick Johnson Racing, which means in the championship, unsurprisingly, Shane Van Gisbergen, difficult name to pronounce, Shane Van Gisbergen still leading for Triple Eight Race Engineering on 1,112 points. The point system in Supercars being completely different to anything else around the globe. Jamie Whincup, his teammate in the second Triple Eight Race Engineering Holden, on 922 points in second, and Chaz Mostert third for Walkinshaw Andretti United on 866. Never get used to hearing or seeing that big number of points for one driver when you're used to Formula 1 with 25 points for the win instead of 100. But in the team's championship, Triple Eight Race Engineering lead unsurprisingly on 1,862 points. Dick Johnson Racing second in their first year for a long time without Team Penske support on 1,423 points, and Walkinshaw Andretti third on 1,227 points. In the world of Formula E, Formula E returned to Monaco for the first time in 2 years, as is traditional for the championship, but this time, for the first time, running the full Grand Prix layout in the past 3 visits to the circuit. They've used a shortened layout. Instead of running up the hill through Beau Rivage, they made a slightly tighter turn at Saint-Devote, the first corner, and took what would normally be the escape road for the Nouvelle Chicane. They ended up coming out at the Nouvelle Chicane hairpin round and then taking the rest of the Grand Prix circuit, this time using the full circuit, which is amazing to see. Just one slight change at the Nouvelle Chicane, making it slightly tighter. They went the inside of what would normally be the apex curve of Formula 1 instead of the outside. A minor change really, just made it a bit more of a tighter corner really, bigger braking zone for regen. There had been some last minute changes to the circuit layout actually, because they had planned on using the classic Turn 1 layout. Instead of using what Formula 1 use now, where the apex curve is brought out into the middle of the road to make it a tighter corner, they would have apexed the Armco barrier right on the inside where the pit exit normally is. But that was changed for safety reasons, unsurprisingly, because the corner would have been so fast, and the circuit narrows up so much it just would have been dangerous. That, and also to create an overtaking opportunity and a regen zone as well for the cars. And then the other change was attack mode was meant to be on the outside of the Grand Hotel hairpin, the famous very slow hairpin at Monaco. Unfortunately that was moved to the outside of Casino Square, which was still very entertaining, a very difficult attack mode to try and take, as you ended up going offline and then basically almost driving into the wall perpendicular in front of you. But it would have been iconic to see it at the Grand Hotel hairpin, really such an iconic corner. But it was changed, I don't really know why. But the other major rule change for this race, in terms of sporting regulations, after the farce at the end of the Valencia E-Prix, the energy deduction rule was changed, and now energy cannot be deducted after 40 minutes from the race. So if there's a safety car or a virtual safety car within that last 5 minutes, the energy will not be deducted, so you don't have the issue we had in Valencia where the energy was deducted and the cars didn't have enough to get to the finish. As entertaining as that was from a comedy perspective, it isn't really what motorsport and what Formula E is about. So that, hopefully, fingers crossed, won't happen again. But in qualifying, it was Antonio Felix da Costa, our reigning champion, who qualified on pole. Sergio Sette Câmara once again struggled in qualifying. He ended up crashing. Looks like a potential brake failure, brake-by-wire failure, because the car sort of locked the rears and spun him round into the barrier backwards at the final corner. But it could have been driver error as well. We've seen lots of mistakes from centre camera, just from pushing too hard. Likes to overstep the limit a lot. Entertaining for us, but costly for his Dragon Penske Autosport team. But in the race, it was lots of intrigue, because obviously the first time using the full Grand Prix layout. Would Formula E embarrass Formula 1 with having a really good race? And indeed, that is exactly what they did. Lots and lots of overtakes, and the stars of the show were Robin Fiennes, Antonio Felix da Costa, the pole sitter, and Mitch Evans, who were enthralling us with a major battle for the lead. Before that all kicked off though, on the first lap of the race, Alexander Sims was pushed into the wall on the exit of the Grand Hotel hairpin, and then Pascal Wehrlein in the Porsche, unable to go anywhere, ended up riding over the top of Sims's Mahindra. Both of them actually carrying on initially, but Sims and I think Wehrlein as well both ended up retiring from the race later on because of the damage from that incident. Amazingly no safety car, because both of them carried on initially, but an entertaining one indeed. And René Rast was the other person to be into the barriers during the race. He was pushed into the exit wall at turn 1 by Nick Cassidy. That was the only safety car of the race, in fact, which is surprising considering it's Monaco. But back to the battle for the win between Fiennes, da Costa and Evans. Just incredible racing, like really professional, on the edge, clean racing, which is exactly what you want to see. It was the perfect race, I would say, for Formula E to come back from after the farce of Valencia. Lots of people finding ways, understandably, to hate on the championship for that. To come back with an incredible race at Monaco of all circuits was exactly what Formula E needed. And the notable moves were indeed Mitch Evans passing Robin Fiennes into the first corner. Evans had attack mode, made a good move on Fiennes into the first corner, but then made an outrageous overtake on da Costa going up the hill through Beaurivage, a place that is just not an overtaking opportunity. He somehow found a gap between da Costa and the Armco, and just drove right past him, squeezed almost into the wall. Yeah, it took everyone by surprise, especially the commentators. They couldn't believe what happened. I couldn't believe what had happened. Incredible stuff from Mitch Evans. He very much deserved to win. All three of them deserved to win, to be honest. But it was looking like Mitch Evans was going to hold on for the victory, but he was tight on energy going on to the final lap of the race. Had to try and save more energy, regen more, lift and coast more even. That meant he was obviously getting slower, and Antonio Felix da Costa made a very, very bold move going into the chicane. Massive lockup on the outside, going around the outside of Evans. Didn't look like he was going to make it, but he did. He did, and he wasn't the first move he made into that corner either. He made some more moves on people earlier on in the race, but that was by far the most on the edge move. Somehow got it to a stop, and managed to go on to win the race, because I was on the final lap. Robin Fiennes passing Evans right on the line. Photo finish between them really, but Antonio Felix da Costa won his first race of the season in his title defence year for DS Techeetah. Robin Fiennes, who scored his first ever finish at Monaco in any racing series. It was a bit of a chip on his shoulder. That's every race he had entered at Monaco, be it in Formula E, or World Series by Renault, or GP2, now Formula 2. He had not finished any of the races, but finally got that chip off his shoulder, finished his first race at Monaco. Nearly was a win, but doesn't get that much better than second. Only can be one better than second. And then Mitch Evans coming home in third, holding on to third for Jaguar, which means in the Drivers' Championship, Antonio Felix da Costa has jumped up to fourth now on 52 points. Mitch Evans third on 54 points for Jaguar, Nick de Vries, despite scoring no points in Monaco, a difficult race weekend for him and Mercedes, to be honest, in second on 57 points. And Robin Feit, who hasn't scored a win this year, but jumps up to the lead of the championship thanks to his consistency. He leads on 62 points. Coming back to the UK, and the British Touring Car Championship finally got its season underway at Thruxton, the first of 2 meetings at Thruxton this year. And on Saturday, as UK viewers will know, it was a very, very wet day, and it was the same at Thruxton, with Ash Sutton, the Rainmeister, coming out on pole position in a wet but drying session at the end. I think it was where people were switching onto the slick tyres right at the end, so it was a bit of a lottery really, but Ash Sutton, of course the reigning champion, made the most of the conditions to take pole position. But on the Sunday, it was a special anniversary for both Rory Butcher and Jason Plato, because it was Rory Butcher's 100th BTCC race and Plato's 600th BTCC race. The legend, the veteran of British touring cars, Jason Plato, most successful driver in terms of wins, equal on Hamilton, in fact, with 97 wins in British touring cars. Hamilton, obviously, with his 97 wins in Formula 1. They had a good race in race 1, both drivers. They were battling for P6, I think it was, all race, with Butcher coming out on top with his new team in Toyota Gazoo Racing. But Butcher's weekend went significantly downhill from then. But going back to the start of the race, Ash Sutton on pole, but he was hit by his championship rival Colin Turkington at the 3rd corner on the first lap. Turkington spinning Sutton around and Sutton dropping to the back as a result. And at the end of the race, or post-race even, Turkington was given a 17-second time penalty. Don't know why it was 17 seconds, it's a bit of an odd number, but that dropped into 10th in the final results. But the start was brought to a halt by a big crash between Gordon Shedden, the returning Gordon Shedden, 3-time champion, and Chris Smiley at Noble, one of the faster corners on the circuit. The whole of Thruxton, an incredibly fast circuit. It's the fastest circuit in the UK, in fact. Shedden was caught out by a moment for Ollie Jackson's MB Motorsport Ford. He ended up having to take avoiding action, got caught out by the wet grass, and ended up spinning back into the circuit, collecting Chris Smiley's Hyundai, with significant impact, to be honest. Both of those drivers are then going into the outside tyre barrier, again with significant force. Both of them understandably retiring from the race, but managed to, the mechanics of each team managed to fix their cars to make the start of race 2. Incredible result or incredible achievement for the Halfords Cataclean Racing and the Accelerate mechanics. But at the end of the race, Ash Sutton, who had been spun out to last on the first lap, recovered to an incredible P10, which was then promoted to P9 thanks to Turkington's penalty. So Sutton, once again, a masterclass drive, coming back through the field. He always puts on the show. Stephen Jelly unfortunately suffered a mechanical issue and retired. He was the only other driver to retire from the race, apart from Shedden and Smiley crashing out at the start. But Josh Cook, who had qualified in second, ended up going on to dominate the first race of the season, as his successful Thruxton circuit, always wins at Thruxton. He's won every appearance he's had at the venue in BTCC. He wins for BTC Racing. Tom Ingram coming home in second on his first race for Accelerate Motorsport in the new Hyundai, the first time in that car for him as well. So great result for Ingram. And Jake Hill coming home in third for MB Motorsports, the team, and his first time driving a Ford Focus. So another good result for Jake Hill, who looks to have his best ever season in BTCC. In the second race though, you thought the start of the first race was a big accident. The second race was marred by a massive crash at the first corner between Anthony Glingeddy and Jade Edwards, with Geddy ending up going flying and somersaulting after impacting the barriers on the outside of the first corner. All drivers are okay, the race was red flagged, but Andy Neate was once again solely to blame for the incident. But to make things worse, he blamed a mechanical issue. He blamed the car and his team and his mechanics. And then post-race, the stewards were found that no mechanical issue was at fault, and Neate was in fact lying to Jade, to everyone. There's been past history between himself and Jade Edwards as well from Silverstone last year. So may have been just lying to Jade to avoid her ripping his head off, which probably would have happened if it was, or if she knew the truth. But I'll read out to you a quote from the steward's report, in which Neate was fined £2,000. The stewards concluded that Neate was driving in a manner incompatible with general safety or departing from the standard of a reasonably competent driver, as there was no evidence of mechanical failure with the car from the data that was obtained after the race. Very, very strong words from the stewards there, claiming that Neate is not a reasonably competent driver, which is true, really. But to hear that coming from the stewards is quite remarkable, really, and says a lot, frankly, about Andy Neate and how out of depth he is in the BTCC field. He's at Motorrace really only for the money, I think. He brings money to the team, I think, and I don't even know for certain, to be honest, but I think that's the case. But thankfully everyone okay, in particular Glyn Geddy, who was the one who went flying in his Team Hard Cooper. Kudos to the Team Hard for building the Cooper so strongly to survive that kind of impact, an impact from all sorts of different sides, top, bottom, left, right, with the roll. And Edwards, very much the innocent bystander, along with Glyn Geddy, she was just caught up on the outside of it all, and was actually the person who caused Geddy to go flying, because her BTC Honda just got caught underneath the Cooper and was what launched it into the air. But neither of them at fault, solely 100% Andy Neate's fault in the Motorbase Focus, who just did not brake or turn for the first corner, it seemed, which is why it looks like the potential mechanical issue, because it was just such a bizarre thing for a driver not to do at the first corner, where everyone else is braking and turning. It's a fast right-hander, but you still need to brake at the start of the race. He was on the inside, so the corners at an even tighter angle anyway. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. He's a safety concern, really, in BTCC. Not quite as bad as Mazepin in Formula 1, but still not great. Speaking of Mazepin, he ended up finishing the race in Formula 1. I didn't mention that earlier. The fact that's an achievement for him says a lot. But after the race was after the restart even of the red flag race, the race was restarted from lap 0 because it was on the first lap, first corner. But Rory Butcher then suffered a big accident himself on the restart, going through Noble on cold tyres, trying to go 3 wide with Hill and Ingram, just dropped it and slapped into the outside barrier. Very sudden stop for Hill, for Butcher even. He was alright, but the car very much was not. Shout out to Dan Camish, who is making his guest appearance for BTC Racing. The only time, most likely at least, he'll be out in the BTCC field this year. He found his way to P2, and if it wasn't for the fact that it was his teammate Josh Cook leading, he probably would have won the race. He definitely had more pace in the lighter car, thanks to the success ballast from the first race. But he played the team game, rightly so, because he's not here for the full season. He said after the race, you just have to swallow your pride in this kind of instance. It would have been wrong for him to take points away from Cook, who looking like he's going to be a championship contender this year. So yeah, good job from Kamish to do that, and just to be in P2, to be honest, in his first time. It was his first day back in the touring car in dry conditions since the season finale from 2020, because obviously he was in that pre-season testing, and all the running on Saturday was in the wet. So yeah, incredible result for Kamish, showing just how talented of a driver he is. Such a shame he's not on the grid for the full season this year. Also a shout out to Dan Rowbottom, making his return to the championship after a year out with Halford's Cattle Clean Racing Team Dynamics. He made his best career finish in P4. He had a great return to the series this weekend. Points finishes in all 3 races, I think it was. And yeah, just a solid result. The faster, one of the best scoring of the 2 Dynamics Hondas between him and 3-time champion Shedden, because Shedden had a difficult weekend with the crashes. So yeah, great result for him. Another difficult race for Ash Sutton though. He ended up having to make a pit stop. He had some kind of engine issue, but managed to recover from that and ended up recovering to P9 once again. So another strong recovery drive for Ash Sutton, but not the way he'd want to start his title defence year off. Struggling to score points, or score big points at least anyway. Unlike Josh Cook, who won his 2nd race of the year, 2nd race out of 2 races, just proving how good he is at Thuxton. It's his 6th win at Thuxton now. Dan Kamish has taken 2nd for BTC Racing at 1-2, and Jake Hill 3rd once again for NB Motorsport. And finally, for the 3rd race, the way the 3rd race works with the grid in BTCC, the winner from the 2nd race draws a number from 6 to 12, and whichever number they draw out is how far they reverse the top positions. So in this instance, Cook drew number 11, so the grid for race 3 is reversed the race 2 results from 1st to 11th, so the 11th place driver from race 2 starts on pole for race 3, and the winner from race 2 starts from 11th for race 3. So yeah, a bit funny how you have the race winner from race 2 doing that. He obviously doesn't want to pick a high number. Cook did, he drew 11, which meant Stephen Jelly was on pole, with Tom Oliphant in P2 for West Surrey Racing front row lockout, and Sutton and Moffat 3rd and 4th for Laser Tour Racing 2nd row lockout, coincidentally. But it would not be as simple as that, because rain fell just before the start of the race, prompting most drivers to switch onto wet tyres, apart from a few, with Jake Hill, Tom Oliphant and Chris Smiley all starting on the dries. Big risk from Tom Oliphant to do that from 2nd. Normally you would do something like that if you're further at the back and got nothing to lose, but Oliphant did it anyway. As a result, dropped down at the start of the race, unsurprisingly, but as the race went on and the circuit started to dry up, the dry weather runners started to come back into the frame, with Jake Hill and Tom Oliphant in particular getting up to the front of the field. But it was short-lived for Tom Oliphant, because he was handed a 5-second penalty for being out of position at the start of the race, just slightly forward in his grid slot, unfortunately. Easy mistake to make, but it's a penalty nevertheless. And 30-second time penalties for Tom Ingram and Josh Cook, our winner from the first 2 races, for not having tyres fitted not having his tyres fitted in time before the start of the race. There is a cut-off point where you have to have the tyres fitted on the car. They didn't have the tyres fitted on the car at that point, so it's a slam dunk. 30-second time penalty, harsh, but that is the rules. Glyn Geddy and Andy Neat, unsurprisingly, didn't make the start of the race. However, Jade Edwards did. So great job for the BTC mechanics to fix that Honda up, but unfortunately she ended up retiring anyway, I think, complications from the crash damage from race 2, sadly. But still amazing for those mechanics to get the car on the grid for the final race of the day, to at least give her a chance. So hats off to them, very good job there. But yeah, so the rain stopped, and the dry tyre runners even came back into it, with Hill ending up taking the lead. But then it started to rain again, and the dry tyres were not the tyres to be on. The wet tyres came back, and it was the fight between Hill and Sutton. Hill on the dry, Sutton on the wets, and Sutton evidently, or unsurprisingly, passing him towards the end of the race as the rain got worse and worse. But Hill, incredible drive, incredible ability to hold on to his car in the wet conditions on dry tyres. He was just pipped to second at the end of the race on the line by Jason Plater, who was on the wets, which meant Jake Hill ended up finishing third. A hat trick of third places actually for Jake Hill. He finished third in all 3 races. Ash Sutton won to finally get his title defence off to a good start in the Laser Tours Infinity, and Jason Plato on his 602nd race even, for Power Max Racing on his return to the championship as well, coming home in second. So great stuff there. Butcher's weekend continued to be miserable after the first race. He obviously had the crash in race 2, and then was caught out in an unlucky incident in the third race, in a head-on collision with Carl Boardley's Laser Tours Infinity. He was spun round by Vic Parfitt, but then Boardley, for some reason, deciding to roll forwards into the path of Butcher. Boardley's obviously never heard of a brake pedal before. Yeah, very unfortunate for Rory Butcher there, who should be one of the title contenders this year, but a difficult weekend to start off the year for him. He's way down the championship order, but at the top of the championship, with his trio of third place finishes, it is Jake Hill. First time he leads the championship in BTCC on 46 points for MB Motorsport. Josh Cook in second, just 1 point behind on 45 points. And Jason Plater, a very good, consistent weekend, finishing off with that second. He is in third place for Power Max Racing on 38 points. And in the Teams Championship, BTC get their best start to a season to date. They are leading on 70 points, ahead of MB Motorsport on 57 points, and Power Max Racing third on 54 points. And a quick mention of the Jack Sears Trophy as well, which is a award in BTCC for drivers who started the season without an overall podium. It's a separate championship for them. Sam Osborne leads that for Motorbase on 52 points. Dan Rowbottom second on 50 points for Team Dynamics, and Sam Smelt in the second of the Toyota Gazoo Racing Toyotas on 37 points. Moving over to the heart of France and the Circuit de Nevers-Magny-Cours, where GTWC, the GT World Challenge Series, got their Sprint Championship underway with a pair of races at Magny-Cours. The first race being a night race. Starting on pole was the Team WRT Audi of Dries van Thor and Charles Weerts, who ended up going on to dominate the night race in the 34 WRT. One of the championship contenders, the Talksport Mercedes with Maro Engel, came to a halt at the end of the race. So that was very unfortunate for them, putting off their season to a difficult start. And then Jack Aiken, the F2 convert, stalled at the pit stops unfortunately, but recovered to a good P12 finish in his Lamborghini. But the race 1 results being the WRT Audi of Dries van Thor and Charles Weerts winning, Albert Costa and Ricardo Feller for the Emerald Frey Racing Lamborghini in second, and the sister Emerald Frey Lamborghini coming home in third of Alex Fontana and Arthur Rougier, who also won the Silver Cup category in that race. The second race was arguably the more interesting one, as I got through the first race quite quickly. Mario Engel and Lucas Stoltz in the number 6 TalkSport Mercedes starting on pole, and they went on to win, to recover from their first race. DNF. Benjamin Golf in the number 30 Rothko WRT Audi crashed during the pit window in the middle of the race, which meant him and his co-driver Calvin van der Linde, the famous South African racing driver, ended up retiring from the race sadly. And then with 10 minutes to go, the number 159 Garage 59 Aston Martin of Tuomas Tumuja crashed with the number 86 ACA ASP Mercedes of Petru Umberescu. They crashed with 10 minutes to go, causing another safety car, which led to a 3-minute sprint to the end of the race. The definition there of the GTWC sprint series. But it was the TalkSport WRT Mercedes that held on to win. There was contact during the battle for second in that 3-minute shootout between the number 88 ACA ASP Mercedes and the race 1 winners of the number 32 WRT Audi, after the Audi died down the inside into the Adelaide hairpin, a tight right-hander hairpin at the end of the back straight. But they both survived, and the WRT Audi went on to finish second behind the TalkSport Mercedes, and third place the ACA ASP Mercedes of Rafael Marcello and Timur Boguslavski. I've definitely messed up. Timur Boguslavski. There we go. They finished in third, which means in the Drivers' Championship, Timur Boguslavski, there we go, and Rafael Marcello are indeed in third place with 15.5 points. In second is Mario Engel and Lucas Stoltz for the TalkSport WRT Mercedes even. They are second on 17.5 points, and in the Team WRT Audi, James Van Thor and Charles Burt leading on 29.5 points, which means in the Teams Championship, Team WRT lead on 29.5 points. TalkSport are second on 22 points and ACA ASP third on 17. So good racing there for the start of the sprint series in GT World Challenge. And last but not least, we move over to the States for NASCAR, once again having a race. They seem to always have a race on most weekends. For the Goodyear 400 at Darlington Raceway, Brad Keselowski on pole once again for the second race in a row, but Martin Truex Jr. was the driver to beat. He dominated, frankly, the whole race. Coming close to the end from Kyle Larson, Brett Larson unable to challenge properly. Martin Truex Jr. becoming the first driver to win at least one of the stages, and then going on to win the race. Before this weekend, no driver who had won a stage at Darlington went on to win the overall race, so that's a record broken there by Martin Truex Jr. Crashes for Cole Custer and Kurt Busch, Custer in a particularly heavy impact into the inside barrier early in the second stage, with Truex Jr. going on to win both the first and second stages. But Truex Jr.'s win is his third win of the season, the most of any driver, but he is still in second in the championship. Onto that in more detail in a second, because it was the 190th win for Joe Gibbs Racing and the 30th win for Martin Truex Jr. So great job there for Martin Truex Jr. for Joe Gibbs Racing. Kyle Larson for Hendrick Motorsport Cunningham in second, and Kyle Busch in third for Joe Gibbs Racing. So double podium there for Joe Gibbs. But in the Drivers' Championship, still without a win, it is Denny Hamlin who leads on 529 points for Joe Gibbs Racing. His teammate Truex Jr. second on 454 points, and William Byron holds on to third for his best season to date still, closing up to Martin Truex though on 428 points. And that is it for this week's video. Lots of racing once again going on. Next week should be a bit of a quieter week in terms of racing, so probably a shorter video coming out from there. I need to check what's going on exactly though. But yeah, most likely a shorter video next week. No Formula 1 or anything like that going on actually, so we'll see what happens there. Yeah, but don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I will catch you next week. Enjoy the rest of your week, enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.